Hello there, everybody, and welcome back again to another episode of Liam's Fight Night Picks over here on the JFT YouTube channel. I'm delighted to be joined by Matt Elliot from the Counterpunch for this week's show. How are we doing, Matt?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Nice sunny evening. So, yeah, all good.
Yeah, it's a nice sunny evening. Bit of rain this afternoon, but the sun's back out now. As we were just saying off camera, it's a mental weekend of boxing. It starts on Friday night in Newcastle, which we'll get into in a minute, and it will finish Sunday lunchtime. Will it be Japan or will it be Australia that goes last? But there's plenty of action to get stuck into this weekend, isn't there?
Definitely. I mean, when you sent me a list over yesterday of the fights that we were going to cover off today, I'll be honest, there was a couple on there that I'd forgotten were even on. Because you say it sort of starts tomorrow night and goes right through, which it's strange in boxing, isn't it? We had very little last weekend, and now we're jumping into a load of shows this weekend. So sometimes there's, even them out a little bit, especially the UK promoters going head-to-head again on Saturday. But it is what it is.
Yeah, it's a shame, isn't it? Very little last weekend, very little next weekend, bar Matchroom going in New York. So, yeah, it does feel, especially on a domestic front, 3 shows in one weekend. TV shows, that is. Look, we won't complain, but you do feel sometimes you could maneuver it around a little bit better, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Right, we'll jump straight into it. We're going to start on Friday night in Newcastle. This is an event I know you're attending. It's Wasserman back on Channel 5, their second card of the year, I think it is. And we've got Josh Kelly back in action for the first time since his appearance at Wembley Stadium on the Daniel Dubois, Anthony Joshua cards. And look, I've said here, remember me. And it is kind of a bit like that with Josh Kelly, isn't it? At 31 years of age now, undoubted talent, undoubted potential. But how much longer can we keep saying that for about Josh Kelly?
Well, we can't, can we? I mean, I think, in fairness to Josh, look, I think Josh wants the big fights. For whatever reason, he's not getting them. Is that his promoter? Do we look at them? Possibly he's being harmed by the fact he's not with one of the big boys. But, in fairness, he had Liam Smith last time, didn't he? And Liam obviously pulled out with illness. Davis stepped in. Now, I actually thought Kelly won that fight very convincingly. I think there was two, 3 rounds at the end where Davis put him under a lot of pressure, cut him, and the scorecards, I couldn't quite believe when it was only a majority decision because I think people's impressions of that fight were skewed by those last couple of rounds. But Josh can't keep fighting people like who he's fighting on Friday night, who no one's really heard of, who's coming across, yes, with an unbeaten record from Romania, or sorry, he might have lost one fight, but coming across from Romania, he needs to be fighting elite-level fighters, and at 31, the clock is ticking.
Yeah, completely agree with you. I mean, we were on opposite sides of Wembley Stadium that night against Ish Davis, and we exchanged a message with each other just asking, did we miss something? Because we both had similar views that Josh had won that quite widely. For me, with Josh Kelly, look, we all know what happened. He lost to Avanesian for the European title. The whole narrative was if he wins this, it's going to be Josh Kelly and Conor Benn. That was a big deal at that time. Once he lost to Avanesian, Matchroom cast him aside, and Wasserman have picked up the pieces. Now, look, you can say what you like about Wasserman. How invested are they in boxing with what they do with misfits? But the reality is, if Josh Kelly isn't happy, he should be big enough in his career and confident enough in himself to make a move to another promoter if he doesn't feel the team he has are delivering for him. That's my opinion anyway.
Yeah, and I guess, I'm sitting here trying to work out why he's not getting the opportunities, and some of that might be down to the fact, some of it might be down to his promoter. I don't think it's down to him, no. But some of it might be down to the fact that he's actually a tricky opponent. And a Conor Benn or somebody like that, probably there's not enough risk-reward in that fight for him. He's obviously going to have his rematch with Chris Eubank, we all assume, at some point later this year or beginning of next year. So it's where does Josh go from here, assuming that he's victorious on Friday night?
Yeah, that is the question. I mean, the path for Josh Kelly doesn't particularly look any clearer if he beats Beer on Friday night. But look, let's just touch on the Romanian that's coming over. You say he can't keep fighting this level of opponent. I mean, the only name on his record I recognise is Darlis Perez, who he beat in 8 rounds last year. But let's remember, Darlis Perez against Anthony Corolla was 10 years ago nearly now. So that sort of tells you where you're at. Underwhelming is probably not doing enough justice for this opponent, is it?
No, it's not. I mean, Kelly's come out and I guess rightly said, at least he's prepared to come over and fight. So you've got to give him that. He's got nothing to lose. His level's below Josh Kelly, but we also know that Josh has a tendency to box brilliantly for 7 or 8 rounds and then just, well, whether his engine goes or whether he loses concentration, probably a little bit of both, he can get caught towards the end. I don't think there's a risk of that in this fight. But But really, he's got to get this one out of the way. He's got to probably look convincing, and then he's got to really sit down with his management team, his promoter, and decide, right, where do I go from here?
Yeah, look, you've said a point that I've always made about Josh Kelly. There's always seems to be a time in fights where he looks disinterested. You think back to the MSG cards where Joshua lost to Ruiz. He was cruising that fight, wasn't he, against after 5 or 6 rounds, and he comes out with a draw that night, which potentially he was lucky to get. But I think I know where we're both going to lean with predictions, but we're locking them in for this fight. How do you see it going in Newcastle on Friday night?
I can't say anything other than a convincing Josh Kelly points victory.
Yeah, completely agree. I'd love to say he's going to get a stoppage, but we both know how Josh Kelly fights, and I think a convincing and wide points victory is definitely the way to go. As I mentioned, Matt is at this show on Friday night, so definitely check out his fight preview that he's released this afternoon. There's some good local Northeast talent on that card. Cyrus Patterson, Dan Howard. There's some good fighters on that card, so definitely make sure you can get some eyeballs on that on Friday night if you can. But we're going to jump ahead to Sunday in Japan. It's the WBC and IBF unification fights down at bantamweight. It is Junto Nakatani and Rajika Nishida colliding here. Look, the Nakatani phenomenon is, if Inoue wasn't there in Japan at the moment, this would be a guy that's even bigger than he already is. But there's not a lot of people, is there, in Japan that can attract crowds similar to Inoue. Nakatani's that guy, isn't he? Just unbelievable. 30 fights, 30 victories, the majority by stoppage, and he just looks to be getting better, doesn't he?
He does, doesn't he? And all roads kind of lead to Nakatani in a way at some point, we all hope in the future, obviously at a higher weight class than where Nakatani is operating at the minute. But yeah, Japanese boxing is phenomenal, isn't it? I mean, probably outside of your hardcore fans, it doesn't really get the coverage that it deserves, but there's some fantastic champions over there. And what a fight this is. I mean, 2 guys who are putting it all on the line, similar age. I think obviously Nakatani's had a lot more fights professionally, but a unification fight, very competitive division. What more can you ask for, really?
Yeah, completely agree. Like you say, similar ages. Nakatani, 27, Nishida, 28. Similar in everything, height, reach. There's not a lot to separate them, but it does very much feel like puncher going in against a boxer. And when you're a puncher at these lower weight divisions, as Inoue has shown on his way through, it's very difficult to handle them. I mean, the best name on Nishida's record is Emmanuel Rodriguez, who, of course, Inoue beat in Glasgow, didn't he, during the World Boxing Super Series. He's a very capable boxer. He did get a stoppage victory in his last outing just before Christmas. Look, if anyone's going to be able to ask questions of Nakatani that we've not seen yet, Nishida could be that fighter, couldn't he?
He could, yeah. And I think he can certainly take this beyond the first few rounds. The question is, has he got enough about him? Has he got enough movement, enough technical ability to wear Nakatani down? And I think, unfortunately, the answer to that is no. So a bit like we've seen in Inoue at times, like Paul Butler was a great example. He took him into the later rounds. He was defensive. He spoiled a lot of Inoue's work. But in the end, he got caught. And when he got caught, it was over. I think this might follow the same pattern. I think for 2, 3, 4 rounds, we might see quite a close fight. But I think when Nakatani lands, how does he react to that, having not been caught by a punch that heavy before?
Yeah, that is the $1 million question, a bit similar to an Inoue fight. You're almost waiting for Inoue to land, aren't you? And it feels the same now with Nakatani. I mean, just constant highlight reel knockouts coming. So Sunday, probably lunchtime by the time we get this one in in Japan. How do you see this one going, Nakatani and Nishida?
I think Nakatani will win. I think it'll probably go into the middle rounds, but I think he'll catch him somewhere around the middle rounds and he'll stop him.
Yeah. So we're agreeing again here. This is making for a very good show, but I do think Nakatani will pick up the IBF belt to add to his green and gold. I have a feeling he's either going to catch Nishida early and get it done in the first few rounds, or we're looking at it going into the second half of the fight. I think it all depends on Nishida's tactics. If he wants to be negative and spoil and move around, it will take Nakatani time. But if he comes to fight fire with fire, then it's hard to look past Junto getting it done early, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
So we're going to stick with the Sunday theme, and we're going to move from some of the smaller guys in boxing to one of the bigger weight classes. And we're going to talk about Jaya Pataya and Claudio Sueyo. Look, I've said here, not another one, and it's the truth with Jaya Pataya. How many of these overmatched, unworthy, so to speak, opponents are we going to see him in with? I mean, David Nyika at the start of the year was a last-minute standing opponent, so we can't read too much into that. But Jack Massey. Yes, Jack Massey was the European champion, but he was nowhere near Opetaya's level. Bradis stands out, of course, is the only one that stands out. Then you got Ellis Zorro, Jordan Thompson. I mean, for a boxer I'm very high on in Opetaya, and he is, someone I believe could go up and win belts up at heavyweight as well. It has to be Zerdo after this one on Sunday. There's kind of no more rope left for these sort of fights, is there?
No, it has to be. There's got to be unification next, so he's got to step up to heavyweight. I think. I just don't see there's any benefit fighting people he's just going to knock over. And it's not his fault again. Similar to the Josh Kelly scenario, Jai's shouting even louder. He wants that unification fight. If for whatever reason it isn't happening, whether that's Zerdo not wanting it or whether it's boxing politics at the minute getting in the way, but once the dust settles on this one, and we'll probably agree on our prediction for this one as well, I'd imagine this is probably the easiest of the ones we'll predict. Opetaya has to get Zerdo, and as I say, and if that's not going to happen, and he's going to have another, 2 or 3 of these fights, just sort of vacate, step up, and start building it past to the heavyweight top guys.
Yeah, look, I mean, I will caveat Opetaya with this, like I done on my prediction show with Sam and Jay the other day. He was stripped by the IBF, wasn't he, after he won the belt the first time rounds because he decided to. Well, he didn't decide. He took the Saudi payday against Ellis Zorro before Bradis again, and he's come out and said, "I won't allow myself to be stripped again." I mean, Inyika wasn't his mandatory in the end because his mandatory pulled out, so he's taken this fight as his mandatory. And I suppose when you've been stung once before by the governing bodies, you almost have to applaud a fighter that's almost willing to say, "Oh, okay, you want to put this obstacle in my way? I'm just going to get it through." It kind of reminds me when Canelo fought Yildirim during that run he had at 168. He sort of put that in the middle. It's just a shame we're getting so many of these with Opetaya, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I did have a quick look yesterday, and I might be wrong here, but this guy's something like 11th ranked with the IBF or something like that. I mean, I don't think he's fought. Has he fought outside of Italy before? I can't recall, but he certainly hasn't fought abroad very often. Fair play to the guy. I mean, he's got nothing to lose, really, has he? He's stepping up. He's got an opportunity. Opetaya, you say, is going to take it because he doesn't want to be stripped. But, yeah, I think it's going to be a fairly easy night to work.
I mean, yeah, let's quickly touch on the Italian. I mean, 17-0, IBF European champion. So whatever's going on with the IBF rankings, they've had to go down this far to get Jai's mandatory. Look, we have opinions on governing bodies, and the IBF are the craziest out of the lot sometimes with how they handle these situations. We spoke about Kakachi being stripped against Warrington on the Wembley card, which didn't make sense. Look, it's an opportunity of a lifetime. Like I've said here, it would be one of the shocks of the year if he can go not only beat Opetaya, but do it in Opetaya's backyard. Do you give him any more than a puncher's chance?
Absolutely not. No, I think this is quick. I think this is 2 or 3 rounds and the job's done, and hopefully he moves on and gets the unification fight next.
Yeah, I agree with you, mate. I've said 3 or 4 rounds for Opetaya. I think we could be looking at something similar to the Inyika fight in terms of how brutal the stoppage is when it comes, if that makes sense. And I imagine you're going to be on the same page here. Yeah,
I think so. I think he stops him, and it's just how quickly he can get it done, really.
Yeah, and look, as we said, Zerdo is fighting Dorticos on that Jake Paul Chavez Jr. card. I mean, how that can be undercard fights with a fight like that. But anyway, hopefully Jai Opetaya is over there in America. Hopefully he's shouting off loudly. And I mean, the first Riyadh season card of the year, which is likely to be Bivol Beterbiev 3. I couldn't think of a better co-main event than Zerdo Ramirez and Jai Opetaya.
They've got to get it done. I mean, where does Zerdo go? If Zerdo doesn't fight him, what's his plans? It makes sense. The money will be there. Let's just get it done before the year's out, hopefully.
Yeah, look, Baddy Jack can hold on to that WEC belt and ask for as much money as he wants, but he's not going to, he's going to want the other 3 to be brought together first. I think Baddy Jack maybe have an injury of some sort that's going to keep him out of the ring for a while. But look, we're going to move on to the first. Oh, go on, mate, if you're going to say something.
No, I was going to say, I think Baddy Jack's been ordered to rematch as well today, hasn't he? So that kind of puts him out for the next 6 months anyway. So I guess there's a clear path for these two to meet if all parties can agree.
There you go. Maurizio's read the script. He wants another undisputed champion, so he's decided to put Baddy out of action for a little bit longer. But we're going to move over to the UK. And look, 2 stadium shows this weekend. We got boxers offering Is this their last card on Sky Sports? I mean, that's a conversation that could run all night, so we won't say too much on that. And of course, we've got Queensbury and Ipswich, which we'll come on to later. Callum Simpson, he's back at Oakwell after a career best performance against Zach Chile for the British and Commonwealth last summer. He's back with the European title in his sights. Ivan Zuko is going to be in the opposite corner. Callum Simpson's rise has been probably one of boxers' biggest success stories over the last 4 years. Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, I think Callum's done a great job. You know, I think boxing, to be fair, then they've managed him well. He's picked up some belts. He's got a great following. He's not afraid to chuck himself into fights. I mean, was there 2 weeks between his last 2 fights? So, you know, he's keeping himself active. He realised, obviously, that he wasn't tested enough at the beginning of the year, and he jumped back in a couple of weeks later. I was down in Wembley Arena that night, and there was a load of Barnsley supporters kicking around, you know, creating a good atmosphere. So he's well backed, he's well followed. It's no surprise that they've gone back to Oakwell. It makes sense. A little bit disappointing with kind of, I understand, obviously, you know, he's fighting for the European. It makes sense. I think, you know, there's better fights out there for him, and hopefully he gets through this one, picks up the European, and then he's looking at world honours at some point down the line.
Yeah, I mean, look, we just praised Jai Up Is Higher for the fact we're in June and he's in his second world title fight. We're in June and this is Callum Simpson's third fight. He done Steed Woodall on the in Sheffield at the Cannon Medical Park. And then we lost Vidal Riley and Isaac Chamberlain, didn't we? So Ben put out the old bat signal that Eddie used to give to Dave Allen to save his show, and he brought some fans down as well, which from what you told me at Wembley Arena that night, those Barnsley fans were well needed to add a bit of atmosphere to the place.
Yeah.
An interesting thing about Callum Simpson, just before we come on to Zuko, is where does he go next? So he's at 168, and we all know that the belts are tied up with Canelo. And no disrespect to Callum Simpson, he's nowhere near the Canelo sweepstake, especially at the point of the career Canelo's in. One fight that's been mooted, and Callum has been quite vocal about himself, is him stepping up to 175 and Ben Whittaker. Do you think that could be something we see towards the end of the year? I mean, for Sky Sports, it could be something that's, you know, saves the back end of their domestic boxing year if we do see that, couldn't it? Yeah,
possibly. For me personally, though, I like the Mark Jeffers fight.
Yeah,
I know they've got the same manager. It was mooted after the Cherry fight that they would only meet for a world title or for major titles. And I guess if he picks up the European, you could class that as obviously as a major title. They could sell out Oakwell. They could, you know, have a great fight. And I think they're both pretty evenly matched. And I think Jeffers, to be fair, his career management is the absolute opposite to Simpson's. I think he isn't getting the opportunity his talent deserves. And I think that's a fight that, certainly from Jeffers' point of view, is easy to make. Simpson might see it as a little step back at the minute, given where he's at. But I think if you can't get the opportunities at world level, and those belts will undoubtedly fracture at some point and some point soon. But in the meantime, what better fight to take domestically and to sell locally than a fight with Mark Jeffers?
Yeah, I mean, you bring up Mark Jeffers. He's on this card against the American Sean Hemphill in a fight you'd expect Jeffers to come through as well. Simpson still has the British and Commonwealth. I mean, we've got an all-British, Commonwealth and European fight between Garner and Bellotti in July. Why not make it another one for boxing with Simpson and Jeffers? I think that's a great shout. But let's come on to the Italian quickly. The only opponent that stands out on his record is Jermaine Brown. And that was, you know, even Jermaine Brown is a 160 that really flirted with 168 occasionally. There's an argument that the European belt isn't as prestigious as it was going back 5 or 6 years. You almost want Zuko to be competitive, don't you, on Saturday night, rather than a similar blowout to what we saw with Dalton Smith at the start of the year, if that makes sense?
Yeah, and I think he will be. I think, okay, his record, again, you can talk about who he's for, but I think he's a hard hitter, hasn't he? I think he's got quite a high knockout ratio. Yeah. So again, I think he'll be a live wire. I think he'll be dangerous in the early few rounds. I think ultimately Simpson will have the energy and the sort of engine to get him through. But I'd like to think it'll be relatively competitive main event. The rest of the card we probably won't debate, but I think that's the one that stands out. The rest probably in quality is lacking a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, You've just touched on the card, so I may as well come into it. The co-main event is Reece Edwards and Thomas Asomba. I mean, Reece Edwards deserves a homecoming after going out to Saudi at the back end of last year, but is a 14-9-1 Thomas Asomba really the best they could have done for that, with all due respect to the, again, former European champion that he is? But let's keep it on the main event. Let's get a prediction then. Oakwell, Saturday night, a raucous home crowd. How do you see this going?
I think it'll be competitive for the first few rounds. I think Simpson will take over, and I think he'll win probably on points, but possibly late stoppage.
Yeah, I mean, I hope it's competitive. I hope we don't get a blowout in one sense. But Callum Simpson, a raucous home crowd, he's openly admitted the only thing that disappointed him about the Chile fight was he didn't get a stoppage. So I think that's going to be on his mind. It was 7,000 last year. It's 15,000 on Saturday. I think he's going to look to make an even bigger statement. And for me, we'll see a stoppage from Callum Simpson. I'm going to go between 7 and 8. Sorry, 7 and 9. 7 and 9, I think we'll see a Callum Simpson stoppage. And he'll add the European title to what the belts that he's already got in his locker.
Yeah.
So just 2 fights left to get into. And we are going to come on to the homecoming of the new WBO lightweight champion in Keyshawn Davis, taking on the Dominican Edwin de los Santos. Keyshawn Davis has the potential to be the savior, not only of American boxing, but top-ranked boxing at this point, doesn't he? His star power is undeniable. And what I love the most is he won this belt in February. We're in June. Yes, he won it early, but how many times do you see champions take time and time out of the ring before they get their homecoming? We're in June, and we're already getting the Keyshawn Davis homecoming. It's hard not to get a bit carried away about this talent, isn't it?
Yeah, he's phenomenal, isn't he? Certainly what he's shown us so far. And I think that last performance against Berinchik, he was just dominant. As you see, he blew him out there. But you're right. I mean, look at some of the big profile names in America. It's, if they fight once a year, Gervonta Davis, how often does he fight? This guy's jumped straight back in within sort of 3 or 4 months. And yeah, it's another good fight on paper. I think, obviously we'll come on at the opponent. He's not been particularly active of late, but I think it's a dangerous fight potentially for him. But it just shows the confidence he's got and that, he backs his own ability.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like you've just said, you just brought up Gervonta Davis, who could be a future opponent for Keyshawn if he can get through Lamont Roach in their rematch. It's just good to see a young American talent want to be active, not to, undoubtedly when Keyshawn opens his mouth sometimes, you kind of cringe at some of the things he says. He doesn't have that razzmatazz on the mic, but he's willing to let his talent do the talking in the ring. And that is, unfortunately, the opposite to his opponent, De Los Santos. I mean, you just touched on him not being the most active. His last fight was in November of 2023 when he lost unanimously to Keyshawn Davis. Don't get me wrong, he is a talented fighter, but that inactivity and then going back in against one of the hottest commodities in boxing at the moment, it's as dangerous a hand-picked opponent as they could probably have got, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree. I think he'll plant his feet and he'll not be running around the ring. He'll be there to fight and there to try and cause an upset. So I think it could be a firefight while it lasts, this one. So, credit to him for taking the fight. What kind of physical condition he'll be in, as you say, with that, over a year's, almost 18 months in activity. But yeah, it's still a fight that on paper, has the potential for an upset.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. Completely agree. So let's get into a prediction for this one. Main event coming to us from Top Rank, be the early hours of Sunday morning here in the UK. Does Keyshawn Davis make a successful first defense?
Yeah, I think he does. Keyshawn Davis can bang as well. He's not, he's got pretty much everything that you'd want from a future superstar. And I think he makes another impression here. And I think he sort of backs up what he did when he won the title. I think he gets stoppage. I think he gets it probably again mid rounds.
Yeah, I completely agree. Everything is stacked towards Keyshawn Davis at the moment, isn't it? He's one of the hottest commodities in boxing, like we say, in Top Rank, and very keen to not let his star power dwindle. I think we're going to see Keyshawn Davis between 4 and 6. I'm going to say, I just have a feeling there's something in the air with him at the moment, isn't there? And he just looks to want to make statements. And then the question is, what does he do next? I mean, Andy Cruz has a final eliminator for the IBF strap next weekend, doesn't he, in New York? It wouldn't at all surprise me to see him upgraded to full champion. Andy Cruz, Keyshawn Davis, back end of the year, first time in professional ranks. Do you think that's likely?
Well, he's not going to fight Stevenson, is he? He's been quite clear on that. They're not going to fight each other. They're good mates. Yeah, that would be a good fight, wouldn't it? Yeah,
look, I mean,
if he took that fight and he was prepared to jump into that fight, then that certainly backs up his credentials. So, yeah, I think that would be a mouth-watering fight if it could take place.
Yeah, I mean, look, Keyshawn has the wool over Andy Cruz as an amateur and has undoubtedly looked more impressive as a professional so far. So I suppose if it's not Andy Cruz, the winner of the main event between Hitchens and Kambosos could be another option. But there's a lot of fights out there for Keyshawn Davis at the moment, and it's just about hoping that Top Rank deliver for him.
Yeah.
Excuse me. So, sorry, one fight left to cover, and it's the second of our UK stadium fights. It is taking place at Portman Road Stadium in Ipswich. It is Fabio Wardley and Justice Hooney for the WBA interim heavyweight title. It's a fight I'm very excited to be attending this weekend and covering for yourself, Matt, over at the Counterpunch. So we'll be at the press conference and the weigh-in as well as the fight night, which will be something different for me. Look, the belt shouldn't really matter on this fight. It is, I mean, the WBA have a regular champion and a super champion. They don't need an interim champion, but here we are with it happening. This is all about Fabio Wardley finally getting a fight at Portman Road. We know it's been mooted the last 2 off seasons. Ipswich have been on their rise up the football pyramid, so there's needed to be priority put into this stadium being right for the football club. That's not there for this summer, so this fight's been made. Fabio Wardley from White Collar Boxing headlining in a tent in Christchurch Park on the other side of the town 6 years ago to headline. And it's a fantastic story, isn't it? I know he's keen to move away from the white collar story, but it is very impressive, that side of his journey, isn't it?
Massively. I just think it goes to show that you don't need to have had a massive amateur pedigree to be successful. You know, there are other people who've not had, you know, tens to hundreds of amateur fights that have actually gone on to do all right in the sport. But he's the one that stands out as, you know, he wins this, he moves into, I get your point on WBA position, but I guess Queensbury will then have all the interim champions, and it'll be all eyes on what happens in July between Dubois and Usyk. And, you know, again, if Usyk's victorious in that fight again, a bit like Canelo, you think the belts are going to start to fracture at some point, and he puts himself in a prime position. And I think, you know, he's done brilliantly well to get where he is. He's clearly well supported, he's well liked, and the man can fight. So, you know, this is a great opportunity for him.
Yeah, look, I mean, I completely understand your logic, and they've got Parker with the WBO. I think Frank's got options on Caballero, who's the WBC interim. Fabio picks it up, they've got the full house. All they need is the IBF to throw an interim at it.
Derek Chisora, IBF.
Yeah,
they've got him.
That could come. But you're right with Fabio Wardley. I mean, a lot of people have questioned him and where he's, you know, how good is he, where he's at. He answered a lot of those questions with how emphatically he beat Fraser Clark out in Saudi last time out. But I think it's the rise, you know, that he's been through. So he fought Eric Molina out in Gibraltar. Yes, Eric Molina, that was his last fight, but that was a fight to, you know, people ask questions about. He then beat Nick Webb for the English title in Eddie's back guards, and he picked up the British against Nathan Gorman before beating Adelaide. I mean, he's progressed at a very nice rate, and now fringe world level feels like the place for Fabio to move to, doesn't it?
It does, and I think the good thing with the Fraser Clark 2 fights is he also showed he can be dragged into deep waters and can come out. You know, that first fight was very competitive. There was occasions in it after he got his nose busted that he was under a lot of pressure in that fight. So he showed that, yes, he can punch and he can stop people, but he can also, you know, dig deep and get through difficult moments. So I think he's got all the attributes. And in a heavyweight division where you take out the elite and there's a litter of guys kind of just at the level below, he's certainly in amongst them. And it's a great opportunity for him on Saturday night.
Yeah, completely agree. So let's come on to his opponent, the Australian Justice Hooney. It's Queensbury against Matchroom again. We're loving these rivalries at the moment. The first one proper since they've both moved over to the zone. We've just spoken about the inexperience Fabio had as an amateur. I mean, the complete opposite for Justice Hooney. Yes, Fabio's had the more impressive professional career out of the two, but Hooney undoubtedly was the more decorated amateur. I mean, a 35-2 record, I think it was there.
Yeah, and he, you know, they built him quite well as a professional. He had that wobble, didn't he, against Lorena in the final round where, you know, he was hanging on at the end, if we're honest. And then they've kind of probably rightfully stepped him back a little bit in his next couple of fights. So this is a big step up for him. And obviously he comes in as not a late replacement for Miller, but, you know, he's had plenty of time to prepare, but he wasn't the original opponent for this fight. So he's grabbing an opportunity that's been put his way, and he'll be confident that he can come in and cause an upset.
Yeah, look, I wasn't gonna touch on it too much, but I'm much more into this fight with Hooney as an opponent than Jarrell Miller. I've made my standpoint on not just Miller, by the way, all drugs treats in boxing. They shouldn't be getting big opportunities like that. So when it was announced that Miller was injured, even though Fabio's my local fighter and I was excited for him, I wasn't too disappointed, shall we say. But you've just summed up Justice Hooney in the best way possible. Kevin Lorena, he was on skates in the last round. I believe if that was a 12-round fight rather than a 10-round fight, it would have been interesting. And then since then, he's had 3 fights and they've all gone 2 rounds. Troy Pilcher, second-round TKO. Rabussi, second-round TKO. And Sean Fontaga in January this year on the Jai Opetaia card was also a second-round TKO. I don't think the late replacement narrative is going to sell here because Justice Hooney was going to be fighting on the Jai Opetaia card before this came about. So he was always in camp to fight this weekend. It's a puncher against the boxer, isn't it? It is undoubtedly the punching power of Fabio Wardley with, I think, a 70% knockout record with the boxer and I guess the amateur pedigree that comes with being a boxer in Hooney's case. Hooney needs to keep it long and maybe see if Fabio shows signs of dwindling in the second half of a fight, if he can get there.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what he needs to do. I think he's going to have everything stacked against him in those early rounds, isn't he? He's going to have the crowd very much on Wardley's side. Wardley's going to be eager to put a performance on. If he can come through those first few rounds, then who knows? But that's the key. Can he get through, the first 3, 4, 5 rounds? Yeah, and if he does, can he then, start to make his boxing skills, can he do enough with his boxing skills to get the kind of the momentum to win rounds? That's the question here, really.
Yeah, that is the question. I mean, I've been underwhelmed by Hooney. I think that would be a fair reflection. I know I'm not alone in that, but Fabio's big night. And I think my biggest fear for Fabio, and I've said this on another prediction show earlier in the week, it's going to be raucous inside Portman Road. I think they've sold close to 16,000, 17,000 tickets, which is a phenomenal effort. Ipswich isn't known for its boxing, so it's a phenomenal effort. Can Fabio not get drawn into that atmosphere? Can he stick to the game plan? I actually wouldn't at all be surprised if Fabio gets dropped in the first or second rounds because of the atmosphere and has to come back through some adversity in this fight. I'm hoping it doesn't happen, but it wouldn't at all surprise me. How many times have we seen it with fighters, on their big nights? Tony Bellew against Makabu, he was on his backside in the first round before he get the stoppage. It wouldn't at all surprise me to see some adversity, but we'll get a prediction locked in, mate. Portman Road, Saturday night, WBA interim strap on the line. Who wins and how?
I think Wardley wins. I think, there might be a couple of sticky moments for him, but I think he wins. I think he stops him. In terms of rounds, I think it probably, I don't want to keep saying happens in the middle rounds, but I think it probably happens sort of mid to late. I would say maybe sort of 7, 8, round 7, round 8.
Yeah, I mean, like I've just said, I think could be some hairy moments for Fabio early on. I think Hooney's going to want to come out and stick it on him. Fabio's probably going to want to make a statement early with such a boisterous crowd behind him. I think Fabio wins. I'm going to say 5-7, so slightly earlier than you are, but Fabio Wardley via stoppage to pick up the WBA interim strap and concludes, well, at least the Saturday night. We've obviously got the Sunday fights we touched on. The good news on the clash front is Shalom and Boxer have come out and said they are looking for a 9 p.m. main event, so they will be going earlier than the Queensbury card. I mean, there isn't many fights on the Boxer card, so it's nice to know they're not going to drag it out. But fingers crossed for everyone that wants to tune into both fights. You should be able to. Before we go, mate, just let everyone know your handles on social media. Of course, you've got your website and your blog as well. Where can people find you?
Yeah, so the website's thecounterpunch.co.uk. Twitter handle is shown there at @tcounterpunch, and then on Instagram at the.counterpunch. So, yeah, that's where you can find me.
Yeah, make sure you are following Matt and keeping in touch with the content he puts out there. I'm a big advocate for the small hall promoters as well, which is something that myself and the boys that I do my other bits and pieces with are passionate about. It's not just about the fights you see on TV. There's some cracking small hall promoters that are the bread and butter of boxing. But as always, thank you very much, everyone, for tuning in and listening. I will be back with Mr. JFT for Straight Talk on Thursday night, so be sure to join us then. Bit of UFC content to come as well this week with UFC 317 also happening on Saturday night. It's all going fight sports this week. Be sure to follow myself. Be sure to follow Matt. Be sure to follow the channel. And I'll see you again next week. Thank you very much.